Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Effect Office Hours. I just moved to New York City, approximately, technically New Jersey, technically, whatever you count Hoboken as. And I was supposed to have fiber optic internet plugged directly into my veins, but that's not here yet. Neither are any of my belongings or my wife or my child yet. So they're all going to be here later. But nonetheless, we're going to go forward, and we have Michael Arnaldi, the man behind it all, the man born inside of Effect itself, and Maxwell Brown, his firstborn son, Max, and confidant, who also is. Can I say the secret project that you've been working on, Maxwell? I'm not sure if that's public knowledge.
Yes, you can. Also, Kit, you may want to shut your video off because I think it's affecting the quality of your audio.
Perfect. Okay, and that's all right. Everyone remember what I look like, and now enhance it. And great. Okay, cool.
In the recordings, we'll have a play with Sora, and
there you go.
A fake version of Kit.
Sam Altman with a handlebar mustache or something. Well, yeah, Maxwell just released Effect. He forked a child process. I don't know how do you say this. So Maxwell, you just had a baby. You've just spawned.
I did. So my son was born 2 days ago, three days ago.
That is so amazing. Super cool. And so, yeah, we've all been a little busy. So apologies for the slight improvised, extra extemporaneous nature of today's broadcast. Next week and following weeks, we're going to only get smoother and more professional from here. I will have a face that's not AI generated. Michael will not be here. No, he might be here. Anyone will be here. I don't know who else is going to join, but we'll get everybody from Effect to join.
I probably will.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we'd love to have you forever. We'd love everyone.
I was looking to have a conversation while watching at your face, but I'll try to do it.
Maybe, Maxwell, you could synchronize your face to my voice, and then we can just be one person. But yeah, okay. So what we did last office hours that seemed to go well is we let people call in using this Riverside app, and then we answered their questions. And that was nice because it made it feel really professional, sort of. And we could all learn the context at the same time. And ask follow-up questions to those people. So a few folks messaged us in the Discord, the official office hours chat, and submitted some code bases and questions. I looked at a little bit of each of them, but I don't know if El President, if that's how you pronounce your name, or Tom, or Ratius, or anyone else who has questions, has the ability to call in. Please.
I think the audience is saying that guys, do you have the live call-in button? Tom was saying that his is dimmed out, but he needs to be using Chrome. Does everybody else have the capability of calling in right now if they wanted to?
Yeah, it sounds like I see this issue pop up. It says it seems like you might need to use a Chrome or Chrome-like browser to call in. So you might have to rejoin with that. But we'll give it a moment for people to join in. Even though I did see one question that came in that I think, Michael, you'd be really qualified to answer. Well, maybe everyone would be. But which is, what's the current progress on Effect Small? And what are the top 3 things to look out for with Effect Small? So, Michael, commit to a due date, I guess, or a release date.
No, I won't commit to a due date. It's a little bit too early to commit to a due date. So initially it was planned for the end of the summer. Then I think we kept on working, and especially Giulio has since went to a full rewrite of schema, which I now think it's close to be ready. But I'd say that's probably the last major thing that is holding back a release. The minor things that are holding back a release is we still have to do a final pass on namings of the various functions and of the various modules. Plus, we've been doing some restructuring. We've been a little bit back and forth because we felt like in 3.0 we added all the modules inside the main effect package, so you would get an extremely large list of modules. Was fine for me, but it's sort of annoying to see so many modules, and because with Effect 4.0 we've decided to merge a lot of ecosystem packages in the main core of Effect. So you would no longer have, for example, an external platform package and an external SQL package and so on and so forth. You would have everything in the main Effect package. We felt like the design of having everything in the root of the package was going to explode, and we ended up on a journey of organizing modules in specific subdirectories. But we went a little bit too far, and now we have every single module almost in its own folder, so it became a little bit verbose on the inputs that you have to write to use Effect. So we are sort of trying to find the right balance on what goes into the main root repository and what goes into subfolders. But I think after we figured out those things, it's almost ready to go for an RC release. We still have to finish porting, I guess, some channel and stream combinators that probably Maxwell was working on, if I recall correctly, before he spawned a different entity with his wife. And but we're very, very close to RC. I should say that the moment we start publishing betas and RCs, it's the moment to start testing out Effect in real project. So we will take the time to declare this stable, because as I've hinted at Effect Days, the plan is for Effect 4.0 to be a long-term support release. So we need to be really sure that what we bring to market, we can commit to support this for the foreseeable future without further changes. So I guess the process will take a few months from where we are to the point where we declare it stable. But I'm very happy and very confident that it's going to be an extremely good release. Some of the performance improvements are just mind-blowing. I think Team posted like probably a week ago that they ended up optimizing a stream combinator more than 100x. And I'm still surprised that these things works. But as Max is keeping on the work and continuing to port tests, and apparently it keeps working. So to my surprise, we're getting there.
Yeah, and I should also point out that I think that Tim posted like a brief sort of like he posted kind of like a brief idea of what the release process will be like to get us to a stable release. So I think that right now we're only, I think I mentioned this last time we were doing office hours, but right now we're only publishing snapshot releases while we're in like alpha mode. And then at the point that we have things at the point where we're ready, we'll start publishing betas out of the Effect small repository. And then once we're satisfied with the betas, we'll probably keep publishing release candidates out of the small repo. And then once we have, like Mike said, several months down the line, once we feel like things are stable, we'll move everything into the main Effect repository and start publishing out of there. But, all that being said, we're hoping soon to be able to have We're hoping soon to be able to have betas on NPM for people to try out. But there's just like some smaller work that needs to be done before then. Tom is requesting to call in. Maybe we'll take Tom first, Mike, if that works, and then we can start taking other calls.
That's fine.
All right.
So my big question is, you got any pro tips on progressively adopting effect in a large existing production code base? Maybe where not everybody at the company is completely 1,000% on board with effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one good reference for this would be, I think Attila Vecerek from Zendesk gave a talk at Effect Days last year, and he shared also some notes in his GitHub. I don't remember exactly where. We can find the links and point them to the Discord chat later on. Basically, their use case is, obviously Zendesk is a large company and they have a lot of code that is already there, and different teams working on different pieces. And those messages are annoying while we speak, though, because they bring us out of context. So whoever is bringing them on, please wait. Apparently, I've commented, haha, somebody has joined from my account. Okay. Apologies for the confusion. Going back to the topic.
No worries.
So I think the advice there would be, especially in large code bases, start with some leaves, whatever they mean in your domain. So avoid like those big rewrites at first, and start with the small. It's tempting. I know it's tempting to always go on and rewrite everything. We are software developers after all. Mm-hmm. We like to rewrite stuff.
Will never ship.
Yes, of course. And you know, if we stopped rewriting stuff, we would be at Erlang in the 70s, probably living a better life, but we would not have. We would all lose our jobs at some point in time. So
when I was at Facebook.
No, go on, please.
So, when I was at Facebook, they told us like during onboarding of like. Back in the day, there was this huge project to rewrite all of Facebook. PHP, like let's rewrite it in Python or something. And they made so much progress, but like the progress on the rest of everything else didn't stop. So eventually they just had to like, we'll just fix PHP. It'll be fine. And they just fixed PHP instead of rewriting everything.
Well, that's one way. Microsoft ended up fixing JavaScript for similar reasons.
Good job.
Building TypeScript. So, good job. We'll fix things in place.
Yeah.
But I guess the real advice here as of the strategy is to start with small pieces and progressively build up. In that strategy, you would most likely use more managed runtimes, because you know the main entry point of your program will not be an effect. So you need sort of to deal with this jumping back in effect and outside of effect at specific places. And especially if you have libraries that are shared with your team that are specific to your project, if you want to rewrite those, make sure still to have some promise-based wrappers on top of it, so that people who don't know effect can still use them, them just fine. Plus, we are in the age of AI. Almost nobody writes code manually anymore,
right.
And Johannes here has. I don't know why I keep bringing this on and it goes out.
I was bringing it off because you got annoyed by it before.
But this is a different one. This is on topic.
Okay.
And too many technical issues today, apologies. But Johannes made a great point here. And in the era of AI, we more or less want to stop writing software by our own if we can.
Yeah.
And a very good way is to create proper agents.md files or claude.md or whatever your tooling is with patterns that are specific to your code base. So we have some, I've been working on some more sort of generic patterns in some of repositories in my personal GitHub while I play into building some fully featured applications
totally stole
only
those.
with AI.
Very
Yeah,
useful.
but one is not yet public, so you probably
dang
have
it.
to steal to steal the non-public one also at some point.
Anyway,
But there's a mixture of general patterns, and then there's some very specific things that are very specific to your project. And I believe here AI can have a double effect, pun totally intended. The first one is it's gonna help your people to write code, but second, and probably even more important than the first, it's gonna help your people understand effect. So like you have a file and they're not yet on board on it, they might not be able to read it because I keep making the argument that I completely stole from a Clojure talk from Rich Ike, which is Simple Made Easy, probably the best talk ever given at Strange Loop, where he makes the point that readability is subjective. It's something a framework that is simple made easy at Strange Loop. It was making the point again that readability is a very subjective thing. Clojure is very unreadable at first because everybody's familiar with parentheses, but they're not familiar with parentheses everywhere, and especially on the left side of function names. And at the beginning, it's shock. I've done Clojure myself, so I completely get the point. It's awful the first time
the
see
culture shock
Clojure
of just reading effect code. I'm still not over it yet. It's still I'm like what the hell is going on? Oh right,
I get it, but I can also not. I would struggle if I tried to read Chinese.
right.
I don't know Chinese
Until you get
myself,
good at it.
but there's more than 1 billion people reading Chinese on a daily basis. So is it unreadable? Well, for me it is, but as soon as you know it, you can start to read it. And AI here can help dramatically because they can point at a specific portion of code, ask the AI, please explain in human terms what's going on. And if your agents.md is rich in describing the patterns that you use and so on and so forth, the AI is going to do an amazing job at doing this. And I'm doing it on a daily basis on code bases that I'm not so familiar with. Lucky for me, I'm slightly familiar with effect, so I don't need it to understand that piece of the code. But there are still code bases that we work on where I'm blind. And in those, the AI is helping me immensely.
Okay,
so I guess that's my general advice.
To summarize, I guess the biggest question I was looking for was like, should I start at the root or the leaves? And you say leaves. So
leaves.
That works. So
start leaves, unless the project is extremely easy, where you can do a top down. Now, what leaves means might be unclear. For example, let's say you have an Express server. The first thing I would suggest changing is actually the entry point, because then you can set up all your layers and pass them down to the handlers. So you can do something from the top and then have the leaves changed one by one. What I would not do is the full top-down approach, where you rewrite the entry point, you rewrite the thing below, you rewrite the thing below, and then your team just gets to a point where they no longer understand anything and they cannot make progress, they cannot ship features.
Yeah.
So be sure that the effect integration in your project is not damaging the speed, the velocity of development. Otherwise, you're going to have a negative reaction, regardless of if the people ends up liking effect or not. Because the curve of adoption of effect always goes from, oh my gosh, this sucks, this is completely useless. Actually, it might be useful here,
Yeah.
but only for this problem that the 1% of people have.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe it's useful for most of the code. Oh, I love it. I write everything with effect. So the curve is like this.
I've had
And
that
you
curve
don't
with
wanna-
TypeScript, with Tailwind, with JSX, with it's the same
Any
thing.
relevant technology has the curve.
Yeah.
Like if
Programming
you,
at
the
all, I
first
just wanted to
time,
be a designer for a while. Do I really have to code? Ugh. But
like my introduction for programming was assembly, and I can tell you that it was a punch in the face reading assembly books. But I did want
someday.
to crack programs and not pay for Windows licenses when I was 14 years old. So I really had to learn assembly.
I was doing ANSI art for BBSs instead. So, okay,
Good.
so you said, okay, so step 0, resist the urge to rewrite the universe. Done. 1, focus on the leaves first or the entry point, depending on the specifics of the thing. You got to have a good agents.md with good generics and good specifics for the specific project. And then you said something about either custom runtimes or fiber management or something that I forgot.
No, I've said that anytime you go in and out of effect all the time, you're gonna have to deal with runtimes yourself. Effect, you can't just have a single, like in a perfect effect app, you would have a single run fork at the entry point of your program, and you would never call run again. Because if you need to spin up a new fiber, you just call effect.fork. You're inside an effect, you spin up something in parallel. Ideally, even the times you end up using effect.fork is almost never, because you can use effect.all, effect.forEach, all the structured concurrency primitives that sort of hide the details of the fibers themselves. But when you integrate with a different code base and you jump in and out of effect, well, if you jump out of effect and you run an effect inside an async function, well, you're going to have to run it. And you have to run it with your context if you want to do dependency injection and so on and so forth. This is where runtimes comes into place. And we have a module called managed runtime, which is designed specifically for those use cases. So instead of, like, if your main is not an effect, you're gonna create a global managed runtime that you're gonna use to run all of your effects. And the managed runtime is basically a place where you add your layers, and your layers are then constructed only once, and you can use them across your full application without issues. The only thing you need to take care of is, if you want to do graceful shutdown, you're going to have to connect the managed runtime to the process exit. Like you have to do process.on, seek term, or whatever. And in that callback, shut down the managed runtime to tear down all of your layers safely, if they're stateful. Because like 99% of dependencies are actually stateless. So there might be cases where that's not strictly needed. But for example, if you are acquiring a database pool, which is very common in the backend, you want to be sure when your program closes down that the pool is also shut it down. Otherwise, you risk leaking sockets.
Yeah.
They don't really matter that much when Node shuts down forcibly, but they might slow down your shutdown by, I don't know, 10 seconds or up until the point where, the Kubernetes or whatever supervisor you have says, okay, that's it. Taking too much time, you just
when
die.
in doubt, just do it right. Like,
usually if you do it right, you're gonna regret less things after.
Cool. I think I've monopolized enough time. That I think was very valuable. I'm going to go and master all things managed runtime, and see you next week.
You're welcome, and pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Tom.
definitely.
Hello.
Hey, Benjamin.
Hello.
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm a big fan. I've been grokking Effect for about a year. I suppose, Kit was kind of the guy, but he's shooting up the Discord, figure out what's going on. But I posted a few topics in Discord, which were just scroll up here. So there's kind of a few variants, and I'll let you guys choose whichever one provides the most value. But I've got this managed runtime X better auth Next.js entry point adventure, scope drizzle client transactions, and context generic tag lore. Peroth client adapter handler, and there's more description of these in the Discord channel. But I've also got Effect monorepo, tooling curiosities. I've got a bunch of points in there. I don't know which one sparks your interest. I can describe more about those. Whichever one you think would most people, the peeps, would like to see.
Maybe I can quickly comment on Effect Atom, because I see that there's a bullet point in here, and I think it's kind of an interesting technology that Tim's been experimenting with. So Effect Atom is essentially a reactive state management library for Effect. It integrates with a couple of different runtimes. I think that the most relevant to a lot of folks would be like the React integration, but it also integrates with a few other front-end runtimes. Mike, I'm gonna mute you if that's cool, because I can hear you typing.
Or
how do you can you do screen sharing with this app?
I can. I just don't have anything to demonstrate. But
I tried, but it says share, but it doesn't do anything. This website's kind of buggy, TBH.
we might not have participant sharing enabled currently.
I see.
But Effect Atom
I
is
do have the
basically a
links
way
there, but
for you to like hook up your Effect programs to the front end in a very Jotai-esque way. So for anybody who's ever used Jotai as a state management framework, Effect Atom should feel reasonably familiar. It's meant to have like reactivity by default, and you're different when you create an atom with Effect Atom. You can depend on other atoms so that when one atom updates, the other atom also reruns and updates its own state. There's a lot of flexibility with what you can do with Effect Atom, which is nice. And I think from my perspective, what I really like about Effect Atom is that it's got a very deep integration with Effect. So you can write services and things like that with Effect the way you normally would. And you can create Atom runtimes out of those services. And then whenever you like do stuff with those services inside your atoms, they'll automatically be used.
So is each of those runtimes that Atom creates, is this like independently running? It's not all part of like the default runtime in Effect, or is it like sort of like a bunch of managed runtimes that get spawned or something?
Yeah, so the different runtime, when you create an Atom runtime, it's not necessarily linked to all the other runtimes you create with Effect Atom. Having said that, when you create a runtime with Effect Atom, you can give it layers, effect layer, your normal effect layers, in order to like build that runtime, and then those services that those layers construct would be available to you in atoms that you create using that runtime. So what I'll say is that in the background, Effect Atom has global caching of all of those layers, so that if you use the same layer in multiple different places, that layer would only ever be constructed once unless you use a fresh version. So like there is that optimization. You don't end up rebuilding layers many times over. with Atom, which is nice because like behind the scenes, if I remember correctly, there's a shared memo map that allows you to like memoize all the services created by those layers.
I created this like better auth like client adapter thing, and sort of like getting effect wired in with like React state and all of the sort of like, trigger a toast notification. I got it to work, and it, I used like I yoinked a lot of things from some of Lucas Barake's YouTube videos. And so I haven't fully gone down the Atom route yet, but I'm wondering like how much that could benefit. I wish Kit was here, because he'd probably be able to pull this up.
I can try to share my screen and see if this is the correct thing.
That's it. Depending on, I sort of just like crapshooted a bunch of different like topics that could be covered. So I don't.
It's the beep effect better auth service, right? The auth service.
So there's the auth service. So that was the one where I was like wondering about. So like the better auth has these database hooks, and I'm just using like effect run promise in those. And my server runtime depends on auth. And my question surrounded around is, could you pass in like the Next.js API route the managed like the server runtime into the better auth handler, or would it be better to create a separate managed runtime? Because you get all, with all the telemetry and error logs and all of that stuff that I get with the server runtime, and I'm wondering if I should make another managed runtime just for auth, because if auth depends on server runtime, and then like I know I could probably pass it in, but I don't know if I'm thinking about it right.
No, I think there's a slight misunderstanding. Runtimes are global, so you should never have a runtime that depends on auth. Auth is a request specific.
I suppose I mean more like layers, or like I've got a managed runtime.
Layers should be global, so you should not have.
Okay, so say I have this server runtime, and inside of that I've got the my tenant context, or I have layers for my repository. My repository services. If you look at runtime server, packages runtime server, and a source server runtime, I've got that in there. I've got the managed runtime.make app live. And then if you look in web, source app, API, auth route, I use the run server promise and to essentially spin up the better auth service that is in IAM infra source adapters better auth service.
So okay, let me try to unpack this a little bit. Let me duplicate this. So let's start maybe at the root here. If I'm understanding correctly, we've got on this side here, this is your server runtime, and you're assembling all of these different layers that you're building up over here into a managed runtime here that you're using to power, I guess, handlers on the server side of things.
Yes, but I can't, or like I have auth. So what he was saying is like I shouldn't have auth in this, because I shouldn't have that be provided in this layer.
You shouldn't have anything that comes from the request in the layers themselves. So all of the things you have in the layers you should be able to construct them at once at the beginning of your application, and anything else can depend on them.
Yeah, I think because BetterAuth has this like this config that it uses, and you can put in plugins and database hooks and all these things to manage your auth. And I need I have several of these, like I have like IAMDB, which is used by this auth. If you just like search auth service, you'll probably find it. But basically I have this like effect service that just generates this auth service. And I use that server runtime. I suppose it would make sense that the auth service wouldn't have to be in the managed runtime. But I do, if, because I'm not sure like how, because when the Next.js API request gets triggered, I pass in, or I run that better auth service to start the.
Yeah, maybe we could take a step back and like actually look at this auth service in general, right? So like this auth service, where would I find this?
That's going to be an
repository?
IAM, and then that's infra, and then source, adapters, better auth service.
Sure. Okay. So this thing has a bunch of things in here.
Yeah.
There's some auth options. It looks like.
Yeah. So that's like the. So I'm getting like all the, I'm getting my server env and configuring a bunch of auth related configurations. I don't know how familiar you are with better auth, but it's kind of like all the rage right now. And I was like, there's all these like operations I have to do in here, and I want effect to sort of like power it, so I can get like great debugging and telemetry and all of these sorts of things in there. And I actually think that the point that I shouldn't have the auth, or that the server runtime should not depend on the auth service, because then I could.
It's not necessarily that the server runtime shouldn't depend on the auth service. It's that when you construct like the layers for your server runtime, they don't have any context as to what the current the per request like information. They have no idea about that, right?
Yeah.
Because the server runtime you construct is like that, and it looks like a lot of these auth options are things that are just static options,
right?
Like things that you need in order to construct.
Yeah, there's no request, right?
Sure. And then in order to use this thing, like if you needed to do some middleware, right, to perform authentication as part of handling a request, right? Like request comes in, you need to do auth and then
this
do
would
something
be provided
else.
So that I could get the current user. So I can use the better auth API to get the current user and then pass that into like a context, so I can access it downstream.
Yeah, and I think there's facilities for doing that, for creating middleware to do that within the HTTP APIs that we provide.
If you look at, for example, that like email verification property there, it's right, yeah. Like, so I'm piping that into run promise, because that's what better auth expects a promise to be provided to that function. And I was wondering, like, well, so I'm using run promise, but I'm not getting like all of the layer goodness of my server.
I see what you're asking. I see what you're asking. Yeah. So there's a few things here that we could do to like improve something like this. If we ignore, so let's start by ignoring per request information. Okay, like let's start without that piece, because that adds a separate level of complexity. But let's ignore that for the moment. The first thing you could do to improve this, right, is instead of effect.runPromise, under the hood uses a default runtime that does not have any information about the layers that you currently have injected into your program.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you're saying. We have none of that information available to us. The first thing we could do to improve this is to use a method in effect called effect.runtime, which allows you to extract the current runtime. And we would do this as part of like the layer here, maybe. And we would grab like up here where you're getting all of these other different pieces of information. We would get like a const runtime equals yield effect.runtime, which extracts the current runtime from the like whatever current runtime is being used to run this effect. And that runtime will have access to the context that's present like in the effect that you're running currently. So instead of, and then you can use the runtime module. We can probably show an example of this on our website. If I reset this, we'll just do like a really simple example. We won't do anything crazy, but I think it'll be a good like explainer for what I'm trying to say. If we get rid of like all of this additional noise. So if we consider this program here the constructor for your layer, right? What we can do is we can grab the current runtime that's being used to run this effect by using effect.runtime. And this will get access to the current runtime that's running this effect. The thing that's also helpful about the runtime method is you can specify what dependencies you want access to in here. So let's say you have like a my service context.tag my service. We'll just make it an empty service for the moment. And we'll just import context. I forgot a... So we can say, okay, this runtime needs to have my service in it so that whenever I go to use this runtime, it should have this. And that'll mean that your program actually needs my service as well. So this is like a way for you to specify, okay, I'm going to get the current runtime, but any effects that I'm going to use this runtime to run might need this service or other ones. You can specify that in this generic parameter, and that'll get propagated to the outer effect. So that's like a useful way to propagate dependencies. Then to actually use said runtime, you import the runtime module, and you can construct like you can either do it curried or not. I find it's more useful to do it this way, but you can do it like run promise equals runtime.run promise the runtime, and now you've got a run promise method, just like effect.run promise. So under the hood, when you do an effect.run promise, it's basically doing the equivalent of this, but with the default runtime. So instead of like effect.runtime, we use like, the runtime.default runtime. But if you need access to the current runtime to run some effects at like an execution boundary, which is exactly what you have here, you've got an execution boundary here. You need to run an asynchronous thing, an async await thing, but you want to run it with effect with the current services you have. You would extract the runtime up here and then use it down here like this. Run promise, and then this run promise is going to use the current runtime. So
can you share that? Can you share that to the Discord?
Yeah.
I knew there was something I was missing. I was like, how do I get the current runtime?
Yeah, because otherwise you lose telemetry, you lose everything.
Yeah.
And what's nice about this is, again, like any services, like let's say you need, I don't know, I don't see any specific services in here right now off the top of my head, but
I've got like DB as a service.
Sure. So let's say that this needed DB, right? You need DB to be able to run this. You would specify that in the parameters here. You would say, like, instead of my service, this would become DB. And then what's nice about this is you can see that, like, this is complaining that I haven't provided. So you still get the type safety, basically. Does this make sense? I'll share this.
No, that makes complete sense. It's kind of like, I don't know, like, use context in React, I guess.
It is similar to a type safe use context. I'm going to put it in the thread in Discord that everybody's talking in.
Awesome. That just like answered like 3 of my questions.
So I think like the key learning here for the folks that are watching is when you're so this all goes back to like the proper way to use layers. So layers are like if you want to mentally map them to something maybe more familiar, React context is maybe a good way to think about it, right? You have your providers and your consumers. When you are constructing a React context, there's some stuff that you need up front, right? And in that case, when, like in a layer constructor like this is the service you're returning. These are the things you need available immediately, right? To be able to construct said service. And number one, when you're constructing layers, you don't have per request information when you're building the layer most of the time. Like, unless you're building the layer per request, you don't have that information, that per request information. If you need to get it somehow, you either return a method that accepts information from that request, or you return a method that depends on a request, which would be injected later as a dependency. And in this case, the answer to your question is, like, if you need a runtime, you're talking about a layer that needs to run something at an execution boundary. This is an execution boundary because we need to exit effect and run something async await. In that case, extracting the current runtime in your layer and then using it to run said effect is like the answer in this case. So
Yeah.
this is I think our docs are very good, but one area we can certainly improve is the whole incremental adoption story and how to do
Because
things
I didn't
like
even
this.
know effect runtime was a thing.
Yeah, it might be in our docs. Let's see, but it might be something we can do better. We have some information about runtimes in here and what the default runtime is and whatnot, and how to use the runtimes to run stuff. But I think this could probably be, we could probably do a better job of making this clearer. But yeah,
That was super, super helpful. Thank you so much. I don't want to take up everybody else's time. There's another caller that can join in. Other than that, I've got some pretty simple affect your monorepo tooling questions.
Before we get into that, I can just see if there's anybody else who wants to call in. If there is anybody else who wants to call in and hijack Benjamin's time, please do so now. Otherwise, we'll keep going with more questions from Benjamin. Mike,
Yeah, I have a few points about Benjamin's questions. I was reading those right now, so apologies if I didn't have the context before. I think you asked something about creating the runtimes for Next.js, and it's a non-trivial problem because of how Next.js ends up reloading modules multiple times. And there's a hack around it, which I posted in the Discord chat that I recently figured to avoid recreating the runtime multiple times. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight. And then you mentioned something about custom drizzle.
Yep.
Clients, transactions, and context.generic.lore. I think you are broadly correct in how to represent transactions within a data within effect. So what you would do is you'd have some sort of transaction combinator that wraps an effect, and that transaction combinator would acquire a single connection, run the begin transaction, then provide that connection to the child so the child has it.
Yeah.
That said, we have an official Drizzle integration that already does all of this.
I do have that in the... So my question is basically I've created these vertical slices, or what you would call them, but I have the PG client layer, and then I provide that to these slices as the singular database connection, and each of these slices, if Maxwell wanted to show it's in so I've got this db.make function which returns a service effect which depends on that PG client layer, and it creates a Drizzle instance using that PG client layer, but it's scoped to a set of Drizzle tables. So it's not one God client to rule all of the tables in my repo. It's there you go. And so IMDb would depend on PG client, but that's provided in the server runtime after I've merged all of I have IMDb and I have files DB, and then I provide the PG client layer.
So are you sharing the same PG across all of the Drizzle instances?
Yep.
That's fine. That's fine. You're just basically scoping a Drizzle instance to a specific set of tables to avoid giving it access to the full thing. Yes, that's okay.
I've got
That's
this
very much okay.
inside of that DB. I have the dev or the language service provider, and I get this. I'll post it in the. I get this like warning that I'm not sure if it is or if I'm doing something wrong.
Regarding the LSP, perhaps posting in the dev tooling channel and letting Mattia chime in, because he's going to honestly be the best for something like for debugging the dev tools issues. And maybe I apologize, Benjamin, for cutting you off, but we have somebody else. I hope we were able to help.
You helped a lot. You taught me the effect runtime. That's going to solve like 3 of my problems.
Plus, we can keep going next week.
Yeah, let's go.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, you got it, man.
Hey guys.
Hey Don.
Hello. You guys hear me?
Hi.
We can hear you.
I'm good. I'm alive?
You are.
Yes, you are live with us.
That's great. That's great. I've been working on a little project for some time, and you guys might have picked it up. It's called React Runtime, and I do have some interesting things to share. I also have a few questions, more in terms of the direction that I should take, because I have heard something about Effect Atom today that I didn't know about the shared memo map. That's probably a very interesting thing when we talk about, working with multiple managed runtimes, because what I see is that if we are trying to use Effect in combination with React, is that you are going to always have the challenge to construct outside of Effect business logic. And in a specific case, if you want to, let's say, talk to an API that lives at the roots and is stateful because it relies on a cache, you always need to link streams, or you'll have to link things up outside of Effect. So the question is more like, if you have multiple places where you have stateful services, then what is your reasoning in terms of how you would approach the problem? So if this is already a solved problem in Effect Atom, then what would you say is the right direction to take? And that's something that for me is like an unsolved answer of an unsolved question, because I'm just puzzling these things, trying to puzzle it out, but it's just hard to say what should be stateful and what should not be stateful if you use multiple runtimes.
I think.
Can you clarify what you mean by a stateful service?
Yeah. Let's say we have a cache where we store API responses, so we can retrieve from the cache if we do multiple requests.
In memory cache, Don?
Yes, in memory.
Okay. So basically, when you refer to like a stateful service, you're referring to a service that, if created multiple times, could lead to like you getting incorrect information, or a service that is managing some in-memory state that you need to be a singleton almost. Yeah. I think we can maybe talk about this in the context of Atom, but we can also talk about like maybe some strategies to deal with this if you have many places where you need to provide or construct your services. I think Atom is a good use case for like talking about this. We can like show like some examples. So maybe I'll just share my screen, and then Mike, you can always like jump in whenever you want.
I mean, I wanted to make a general point that is, all services should be singletons. Stateful or stateless, they should still be singletons, not instantiated multiple times. So that it's sort of an architectural question about how to avoid reinstantiating the services, which the way you do that is very specific to the environment. For example, let's assume we are in the backend. Okay, that's just for the sake of completeness. Maxwell will talk about it in the context of front end with Effect Atom. But let's say we are in the backend and our application is not all Effect. So we have, for example, an Express entry point with a few handlers, and in the handlers we have to run effects. If we provide the layers at every handler, services are going to be reconstructed. So maybe you have a handler that adds something to the cache and another handler that gets something to the cache, but they get two different caches. So the way you'd resolve those is by using a managed runtime on the top and share that runtime with all of the handlers so that you never have multiple instances created. The way to do that in a front end is slightly more complex because you usually don't want to pack everything in a single runtime, which you usually want to do in the backend. And that's where Effect Atom comes in. Generally speaking, even managed runtimes, there is this property called the memo map. And the memo map is where layers are memoized. So if you wanted to construct 2 or 3 or 5 or 100 different managed runtimes and never have services reinstantiated between them, you just share the same memo map across all of them. And you could either create your own memo map globally and share it, or take the memo map from one managed runtime and share it in the others. So I guess Maxwell is right now showing exactly what I mean with memo map lore, like Benjamin would say.
Yeah.
This is definitely some stuff that is pretty low level. So
it's important.
I
I
think
mean, for lower level stuff like Mike is talking about, I think this is relevant, and it kind of shows off how you can drop down a level if you need to do some of this stuff. So like when and it's actually kind of interesting to go through some of this as well, because when you do like a effect.provide call, right? Like whenever you do something like this, there are like a few things that happen. So when you do an effect.provide with the layer, a scope is created like this, right? We create a scope. The memo map is also created. Create a memo map. So we're almost kind of so far mimicking what happens behind the scenes with an effect.provide. Then we start traverse the layer graph, right? And for every layer that is in here, we provide the scope if required, right? Because whenever you have a layer that requires resourceful services, generally you would have defined that with layer.scoped. And so whenever we encounter a layer like that, we take the scope that we built here and we provide it to that layer. And then we check if that, I guess the first thing we do is actually check if the service is already in the memo map, right? If it is, we return the service immediately. We don't rebuild it. If it's not, we provide the scope if we need to while we build the service. And then we add it to the memo map, right? So and then when we're done traversing the layer graph, we return a context with all the services inside of it, right? So that's whenever you do an effect.provide with a layer, this is kind of like what happens on a very simplified level. This is what happens. So if you have a need to do exactly what you said, where you have like a many effects where you need to actually like build the layer, provide it to the effect, and this is happening in many different places. Mike had a great example of like doing this with express route handlers. Like if you need to provide this layers in different places, you can build a memo map yourself, you can build a scope yourself, and then you can, sorry, this should be a field. You can build the layer yourself, right? This is what happens, again, under the hood with effect.provide. You build the layer yourself. And when you do this, you'll notice that the return type is a context that has the services you want inside of it. So if we actually extract this, first context equals, this thing right here is just a context that's produced by doing this, right? And if we were to just provide the layer, all of this would have been done, but we're doing it manually here. So we do first context, and then you can imagine doing this many times. Right, second is, sorry, I don't have Vim bindings, and when I don't, I'm just slow as hell typing. Mike, don't make fun of me. And then,
I was just about to do that. Come on.
And then if we just do this again, we're simulating this whole thing. Second context. And let's do something effectful in here where, if this happens multiple times, we would see it. Building my service layer. So when we build a layer with a memo map, we give it the memo map, the scope, and theoretically, like when this service is built, it'll get added to this memo map. So if we do it again, we shouldn't need to rebuild that service. It should already be in the memo map. Why is this unhappy? Needs a scope. Why do you need a scope? Because I'm not doing this right. Scope.make. And now we should only see that log once. Because the first time when we build this layer, we are building it by passing an explicit memo map and an explicit scope. Although the scope you can get from wherever you need it. You could, propagate this upward by doing what I did before, yielding the scope tag or yielding effect.scope or whatever. This gets the context the first time, and this time the layer is built. But the second time we actually try to build that layer, it's already in here, so we don't need to build it. But if we added a second service in here, like let's say, I don't know, I don't really want to do this like whole dance again, but if we had a second layer in here that was not already in the memo map, that would get built, but the first one that we already built would not. So the memo map is kind of like just a storage for layers that have already been built. And effect Atom
Can
takes
probably
advantage.
just create a layer.fresh of the same if you don't want to do the dance again.
That's a good idea. Layer dot. So this avoids memoization. And so we should see the log twice now.
Yeah, awesome.
So effect Atom actually takes advantage of this behind the scenes. It has a shared memo map, if I remember correctly. If Tim is watching, he can yell at me and be like, Max, no, you're wrong. But I'm pretty sure behind the scenes there's a shared memo map. And that allows you, Tim is saying, yes, it does. Great. I'm not wrong. If we scroll down to here, you can see that, where are we? These are like slightly more involved examples, I guess. Effect RPC. Let me go to a simple example. Working with streams, working with effect services and layers here. This is probably my favorite feature of Effect Atom, is that, there are so many features of Effect Atom that I think are really cool, but like one of my pain points has always, with using Effect on the front end, even being like one of the core contributors, has been like services. I love like the fact that Effect can let you encapsulate all your logic into services like this. But it was always annoying to do this on the front end because you had to construct a managed runtime and like you had to make sure that that was the same runtime you used everywhere. With Atom, you can take this service like that you have and you use atom.runtime to create an Atom runtime out of said service, out of said layer, right? And if you do this many different times, this service should only be built once, because behind the scenes, when Atom is doing all of this stuff, it's caching the layers that you're building. And then once you have like an Atom runtime, you can use it to create atoms that allow you to access the service. And again, like you could do this in another file in many different places, and you'd only ever get one instance of this service. So kind of getting back to what Mike said, we only ever want one instance of services to be present. And yeah, by taking advantage of like the property of memo map, you can do that with Atom pretty easily. And you could leverage the same type of thing on the back end. You just would need to make sure that you are passing around the same like memoization map. Does this make sense?
I think that's it. Yeah, definitely. I think this is the missing piece for me because obviously, the parts that are undocumented are usually the parts that are missing for the longest time, until they get resolved, either by you guys or by yourself. But
Right.
yeah, this makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that some of this stuff will get better with more documentation, which will come after 4.0. But yeah, sometimes it's all about like surfacing this stuff, and that's the whole point of office hours, is for us to try to surface some of this lower level stuff. Cool. Do you have any other questions, Don? Otherwise, I think we should probably wrap up here. It's been about an hour.
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have because I can go on for some time, but time is expensive.
I think that, like Mike said, for next week's office hours, I'll be back to work, and Kit will have internet. And so hopefully things will be a lot more stable. But if you guys liked this format of like trying to dive into a little more code and whatnot, then we can try to do a little bit more of this kind of stuff the next time.
Yeah, I need to get a bigger screen because I'm really like with my face like glued onto the screen to see what's there. But
and let me share this.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah, but it's just annoying on a small laptop. Like it's a 13-inch.
Well, it's my fault too because I should be zooming in, and I'm just not used to having to zoom in.
But yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. It's better.
But anyways, thank you very much, Don, for your questions. Hopefully you're back next week. I'm gonna kick you off, but thank you very much for joining the call.
All right,
and then we'll
you.
wrap up really quick. Cheers, bud.
All right, cheers.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this week's office hours. We'll see you all next week, and yeah, take care, everybody.
See you, folks.